It wasn't a war. It wasn't a riot. It was a sport. And by the end of the match, more than 100 people were dead. This isn't a legend. This actually happened. Florence, Italy. The year is 1530. The city is under siege. Spanish and imperial troops surround Florence, starving it out, waiting for it to fall. But inside the city walls, something unthinkable happens. The people decide to play a game. Not just any game, a brutal no-rules sport known as Calcio Storico, an early version of football, rugby, and all-out street fighting, rolled into one. And this particular match would go down in history, for all the wrong reasons. To understand the massacre of 1530, we first need to understand what Calcio Storico really is. It began in the 16th century, but its roots go back even further, to Roman harpastum, a violent military training game where soldiers fought over a ball in sandpits. The Renaissance version, however, was something else entirely. Teams of 27 men. A giant sand-covered square. No substitutions. No timeouts. And almost no rules. The goal? Get the ball across the field into the other team's end zone, by any means necessary. That means punching, kicking, elbowing, wrestling, headbutting. Yes, headbutting. You could knock someone unconscious and keep going. You could break bones. People have lost teeth, and sometimes consciousness, within seconds. It wasn't just a sport. It was a show of dominance. And in 1530, Florence needed to show the world it would not bow. In 1530, Florence was surrounded. The Holy Roman Emperor Charles V had joined forces with Pope Clement VII to crush the Florentine Republic and reinstall the Medici family. Supplies were running low. Hope was dwindling. But instead of surrendering, the citizens staged a match of Calcio Storico in Piazza Santa Croce. Not despite the siege, but because of it. It was an act of defiance. A message to the world: we are not afraid. We are Florentines. But what started as an act of pride spiraled into chaos as the match kicked off. Tensions boiled. Soldiers, civilians, guards, all mixed together in the crowd. Fists started flying. Players fought dirty. Spectators joined in. Weapons were drawn. Blades flashed. And the sand turned red. By the end of the day, over 100 people were dead. Some on the field. Others trampled. Some never even found. And the worst part? No one stopped it. How does a game, even a violent one, end with 100 dead? To answer that, we need to understand the rules, or rather, the lack of them. Calcio Storico wasn't governed by modern sports standards. There were referees, yes, but their role was minimal. Almost symbolic. The field was chaos. Imagine rugby, street fighting, and American football happening all at once, with 54 players and thousands of bloodthirsty fans screaming for violence. And remember, this wasn't a friendly match. This was wartime. Tensions were sky high. Weapons weren't allowed officially, but in 1530, nobody cared. Weapons weren't allowed officially, but in 1530, nobody cared. Why do people risk their lives for a game? Why would hundreds willingly enter a field where fists fly, bones break, and sometimes, do people die? To understand that, we need to explore something deeper than rules and records. We need to talk about tribalism. Human beings are wired for belonging. Since prehistoric times, we have survived by forming tribes, groups that offered protection, identity, and purpose. We may no longer carry spears or hunt mammoths, but we still wave flags. We still chant. We still paint our faces. Sports are our modern tribal warfare. In sports, it becomes our team versus their team. And when pride, history, and community identity are involved, those lines become sharp. A match isn't just about the game. It becomes a statement of superiority, vengeance, or belonging. And when that identity feels threatened, violence isn't far behind. There's a terrifying phenomenon that psychologists call mob mentality. In large crowds, individual responsibility disappears. People feel anonymous, emboldened, and emotionally heightened. Sports events create the perfect storm. Massive crowds. Intense emotion. Alcohol. Identity investment. A visible enemy in the rival fans. One trigger is all it takes, and sometimes death follows. Today, Calcio Storico is still played in Florence each June. Players train for months. Despite medical oversight and rules against weapons, the game still causes broken bones, concussions, and internal injuries. But players still line up. Because it's not about winning. It's about representing your neighborhood, your history, your blood. That mindset hasn't changed in 500 years. From the blood-soaked streets of Florence to modern stadiums, sport has always walked the line between glory and danger. We've wrapped viol containing the chaos, regulating it, polishing it, selling it. NCE in entertainment. We cheer when players give it their all, even if that means risking their lives. In some ways, we've just gotten better. We don't throw spears anymore. We sell sponsorships. Helmet designs get better. Stadiums are safer. But the question remains, is sport really safer? Or are we just better at hiding the danger? The 1530 massacre happened in broad daylight. Today, the deaths are quieter, slower, easier to ignore. CTE in American football. Heat stroke. Heart attacks. Performance drugs. The danger never left. It just evolved. We celebrate athletes who sacrifice everything. But sometimes, they never come back. Mark Vivian Foe. Ayrton Senna. Braden Smith. All beloved. All lost. Still, we keep watching. Because we're not just watching sports. We're watching stories. Of strength. Of survival. Of pride. It gives us something to believe in. Even if it kills us. 1530 the Calcio Storico massacre wasn't just a footnote. It was a warning. Most games end in celebration. But some end in blood. Because in 1530, over 100 men walked onto the field, and never walked off. If this story gave you chills, share it. Talk about it. Because sports aren't just games, they're reflections of who we are. If this story gave you chills, share it. Talk about it. Because sports aren't just games, they're reflections of who we are. The 1530 Calcio Storico match may be the bloodiest game on record, but it wasn't the last time sport and death shook hands. In fact, the story of violent sports didn't end in Renaissance Florence. It simply changed uniforms. From ancient chariot races where spectators were crushed under overturned carts, to 20th century boxing deaths in the ring, sport has always flirted with mortality. Why? Because we're drawn to risk, to danger, to the edge of control. In gladiator arenas, Roman crowds cheered as men killed each other for entertainment. That bloodlust didn't disappear. It just got rebranded. Today, we look back at Calcio Storico's blood-soaked history and gasp, but look at modern headlines. A 23-year-old footballer collapses mid-game from cardiac arrest. A race car explodes into flames, taking a driver's life in seconds. Mixed martial arts bouts that leave fighters hospitalized, sometimes permanently. We praise these athletes. We call them warriors. But deep down, part of us is watching for the crash, the knockout, the moment it all goes wrong. Why? Because survival is the ultimate storyline. And the closer someone dances to death, the more compelling their story becomes. Every athlete who steps onto the field, whether it's a grassy pitch, a boxing ring, or a sand-covered piazza in Florence, signs an unwritten contract. I know the risks. I play anyway. We admire that. Glorify it. But sometimes, we forget the cost. The 1530 massacre was obvious. Over 100 bodies left in the sun. But today's deaths are often slower. Subtle. Accumulated over time. Boxers with memory loss. Football players with CTE. Wrestlers with broken spines. The battlefield never went away. It just got padded. Today, Calcio Storico is no longer a free-for-all. There are rules. Medics. Training. But the spirit of the game remains unchanged. Players still represent the 4 districts of Florence: Santa Croce, Santa Maria Novella, Santo Spirito, and San Giovanni. And when they fight, it's not just for glory, it's for heritage. Florence remembers 1530, not as a tragedy, but as a defiance. The city played a game in the middle of a siege. They said to their enemies, "We are not broken. We fight." even if it kills us. That mindset, it never really left. Sports don't just entertain us. They reflect us. Our hunger for belonging. Our capacity for violence. Our thirst for glory, even if it costs blood. Calcio Storico wasn't just a game. It was a mirror. And what it showed us was uncomfortable. That even in the face of death, we still crave meaning, ritual, victory, and sometimes we'll die for it. Subscribe for more stories that reveal the untold truths behind the games we love.